Taylor Brown, and this is the 23rd edition of A Gathering of Priestesses. Again, this is Gloria Taylor Brown, and joining with us tonight is Andrea Adams Miller from the huge metropolis of somewhere in the middle of Ohio. She can tell us where it is later. I know I've got the name. Findlay, Ohio. I looked it up on the map, and it wasn't there. Anyway, Andrea is a friend of mine and has a radio show, and she's a publicity publicist, a publisher, an author, a speaker, a consultant, and many other things that aren't listed on her business card, and most of those are what we're going to be talking about tonight. So I hope that I'm delighted to see that you're joining us. I see that Risa's here, and Andrea, and so some of the other people that are always with us. You know, we have people that come in from as far away as Sao Paulo, Brazil, and somewhere in Chile, and somewhere in Australia, and I truly think it's remarkable that we're on the 23rd show, and we've got some people that have just been absolute devoted fans. I'm glad that they're here. Without you, we're very lonely without you. We want you to be here because it makes us feel like we're actually being heard. You know, the YouTube views are great, and we want you to, tell your friends about it. Tell them about the fact that we are out there. We are leaving these current shows up on YouTube, so they're available. And please post them to your websites, to your Facebook pages. Put comments up and say, even if you don't like it, put comments up. So the more comments I get, the better it's going to be. But welcome, Andrea. Thanks for showing up. And for Andrea, it's late at night, so we have to cut her a little bit of slack. She's on the East Coast, and they normally go to bed early so they can get up at 5 in the morning. So we're going to start, as we always start these shows, with the question, which is, what drew you to the priestess path?
Well, thank you for asking. So, for me, it's actually all my life as a child, I was just drawn to, had more mysticism to them, and were very natural and earth-based, and I had a lot of questions, and my parents didn't go to church, but my grandmother was they went to a Methodist church, and I would go mostly for the sociability because I was an only child and a lonely child, and so I was really happy to go, and I loved the felt people on the board, and they have all the people talk with the sheep, and I loved all of that, but there was always something missing for me, and when I would ask questions, I was told that I wasn't allowed to ask, and that really bothered me, that I was on this quest for knowledge and information, and it wasn't available to me. And then because I was alone all the time, I read all the time. I mean, read books like crazy, and I'm not exaggerating when I said I read about between 30 to 60 books a week. So in 7 days, I was a fast reader. Now I'm not talking, I was not reading like Grapes of Wrath or anything. The small children's books and so forth, and teenage books. And I read one book that I got at a garage sale that was about mysticism and had witches and evil and different things, and talked about the positive, how people are misunderstood in religion for doing evil and are devil worshippers, and how these people were not, and I was drawn to that. And then later in my life, in 5th grade, I got this book. Oh, I should jump up and get it here and show it to you guys, because I keep it in my jewelry box. That's how important it is to me. And it's called A Candle in Her Room. If you ever have the chance, please read it. It's about this family in Wales, and I've always felt like I was drawn there, like maybe I lived there or have been there before, even though I haven't in this lifetime. And I was reading this book about 3 generations and this doll that they were attracted to that was up in the attic of this, the doctor, their dad's building, and it was like a house that was in between for slave ships that would come through. And it had this connection to them, and something about that book just made me very drawn, and it had people who read tea leaves in it, an older lady who helped with premonitions and helped guide them into positivity and away from dark and sad things. And it was just beautiful about these 3 or 4 generations of family. And then that always stayed with me, and I knew someday there was something for me and I was missing. And then in 96, 97, I believe it was, we were renting to some people, and I noticed some books on her shelf when we had to go in for like an... I kept asking questions, and they kept blowing me off. I think they were afraid that I would find out what her interests were religiously and spiritually, and that we would kick them out. And she ended up being the person who trained me for several years, and very disciplined study. She was, crack the whip, and really wanted to make sure I understood things at a very deep level. So it was really nice, because finally someone was willing to answer the questions I had for so many years. The thirst for knowledge was there.
Yeah, well...
So it's my long-winded story.
Yeah, well, it's basically, it's when the student, when the student is available, is ready, the teacher will appear. And Raven wants to know how to access the YouTube videos. Just go on to YouTube and search for A Gathering of Priestesses, and or just for my name. So either way will go up. Thank you. Anyway, so being in Ohio, and you've lived in Ohio most of your life, right?
Always. Same town.
Yeah, same town. So let's just say Ohio is not known as a hotbed of mysticism and spirituality outside of Amish or Quaker or Methodist. I mean, for you, well, I basically brought myself into spirituality in Oklahoma. So if you can do that, you can do it anywhere. Trust me. You can. But I would say that I know at one time, whenever I was doing publicity for authors, that there were 2 bookstores in Ohio, one in Cleveland and one in Cincinnati, that stocked any kind of metaphysical books at that time that would have any events or anything like that. And both of them were very small stores. So, and this is, 10 or 15 years ago, not 20, 30 years ago, whenever you were out looking for something. So, other than this tenant of yours and the books, what were your sources that fed you during those years whenever you weren't finding anything?
Well, actually, what I ended up doing is having so much difficulty is I studied every religion I could get my hands on, and it actually made me very knowledgeable and very respectful of other people's religions, and made me see different parallels that are very similar from religion to religion. And I've had really great opportunity to like sit down with an imam or however they pronounce me, if I knew how to pronounce that better right now. I talked to a rabbi this weekend, people from different religions and different Christianity sects and so forth, and talked about different things. And it was amazing to me on how much I was accepted for being who I am. And I'll tell you what, I actually, most people don't know about me. I just tell them I'm spiritual and so forth, and so being asked to come on here is, allowing me an opportunity of something.
You just froze. Hopefully you come back. Hopefully Andrea will come back just a moment. She's frozen. So maybe it's those people in Ohio that are keeping her from coming out of the closet. Andrea, you may have to go out and come back in, because it's frozen at your end. So, Raven, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You want to come keep me company until Andrea gets back on here?
Sure. Here I am, dead tired with a 4-day headache and looking like the cat dragged me through the rat hole, but here I am.
Oh, you're beautiful no matter where you are.
That's a true friend. So, I think it's interesting. So many of us, myself included, have talked about how we didn't know what to do, so we went to books.
Mm-hmm.
we lived in Ohio and Oklahoma and Wyoming and all these strange places, and yet we were able to find books to read, and we just voraciously read. So I think a lot of us started off that way.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us, if we hadn't had libraries, because it wasn't like you were going to go out and buy those books.
Oh, I bought mine.
Well, whenever I was 8, 9, and 10 years old, I wasn't buying them. So, you know.
I was still reading Nancy Drew then, which of course is spiritual enough.
Yeah. And it looks like Andrea's trying to get back in here. Let's hope that it works.
The first metaphysical books I bought were J. Krishnamurti for $3.98.
Yeah, why don't you stay on here, sweetheart, and so that if we have problems, you can chime in whenever you feel like it. All right.
Okay. Welcome back.
Before anybody gets any ideas, Andrea, Raven is my bestest friend in the whole world. So. Yeah. So, Andrea, you were just telling us you're trying to come out of the closet, and the closet door slammed on you.
Oh, really? That's so funny. I did this 5-minute outtake, and you guys didn't hear any of it.
Nope.
So I'll just briefly share it again. It was just this opportunity to let people know that, I believe in lots of different things, and really this is the one that fit best for me because of the ability to connect with nature and really believe in the best for everyone, and to respect and love other people for the greatest good, and to take a lot of responsibility. In a way, I consider what I do and what I believe as almost, I would consider it a burden if I didn't love it so much, because I take so much responsibility in what I do or say and how that could be affecting someone negatively. So the books that I read were usually books that had little pieces and parts in them, and were books I'd get at the library that you had to give your ID and you had to read them in front of them because they were afraid you'd steal them. And I found a ton of people when I started looking, I ended up finding a lot of people. There was a lot of people in Bowling Green and Worcester, Ohio, and these camps out in the woods and all kinds of stuff, but they were all like hiding, afraid. And I guess it was just funny, looking for that secret nod or, that eye that we could come and talk to each other. It cracks me up.
Yeah, one of our guests who was on earlier, Shauna Ora, was talking on Facebook about the fact that people are looking for groups in their area, and she's part of, organizing some of the bigger pagan events, and they'll get in touch with her, and she's like, well, we do it in Wisconsin or wherever they do it, Michigan, and you need to find your local events, and these days, you need to organize your local events if you want them. If you want to have events in your, in your neighborhood, go on Meetup and say, hey, I want to organize a pagan gathering. The 3 or 4 people that are in your neighborhood, or the 40 or 50 people that are in your neighborhood, will get in touch with you. We have so many of them. But one of the things that we've been talking about, and this is sort of a odd segue, but is we've been talking about how we maintain relationships, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on here, is that in the priestess community, we are vitally interested in developing, maintaining, and making better our relationships with our priestess sisters. We don't want to be in competition. We don't want to be, in backstabbing for sure. And we want to talk about, how to better be in relationships. Now, a number of our sisters are lesbian. So for them, that's, their choice. And I have no problem with that. But one of the reasons I wanted you to come on is because I know that in the real world, you are also a relationships expert. So, and the fact that you've got this background and you've kind of walked the same path we have, a little different, but still the same. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about maintaining relationships and the idea of maintaining relationships among the communities, the pagan community, the Wiccan community, the priestess community, and the ordinary community. So, whatever nuggets of wisdom that you can give us, because truth is, maintaining relationships is one of the harder things to do.
Interesting. I've been very fortunate to do a lot of relationship consulting for people cross religions, so I've even performed wedding ceremonies, Christian Catholic wedding. I did a Wiccan Christian wedding. I did an agnostic pagan wedding. So, and it's because I think I did all that extra learning about other religions that I was able to write a ceremony that crossed over to allow both the partners to be happy and to include family members who had different beliefs, so that all could blend and have everybody get along and be pleased with the outcome of it all. And one of the major parables, I guess, or commonalities, maybe that's a better word, across all of them, whether it was people who were non-pagan or non-Wiccan and people who are within that same belief system, was that what we believe that we say. We often forget that the perception of what we put out there is, we say one thing, but the perception of what we've said is taken in differently by the person who's listening based on what they hear and what they know and what they believe. And so we may say something with the most honorable intentions, and they are offended or hurt, and then we're like dumbfounded, like, what's your problem? And I think that's what I was noticing a lot of conflict between, was what's important to different people and how they respect things. I think as a really good example, I think one of the biggest things I noticed with people who were more Wiccan compared to pagan was the conflict and perception of time. Have you guys noticed that in California as well as in Ohio? That's huge. Paganism here, they tend to be like, yeah, whenever we get around to it. And where I noticed, like, the Wiccans that I was around, they were like, okay, I'm getting hungry. Can we do this? You said 2, it's now 5. Can we have some kind of organization? And so there would be disdain within personal relationships and professional relationships and friendships because of this feeling a lack of respect for their time, for the meal they prepared, for the maybe the entertainment they provided, because people wouldn't show or wouldn't be there. And that was just on not just gatherings, but for like dates and, showing up to meet a friend and so forth, that concept of time and respect. And when I was able to sit down with them and show them, like, who respected time more and who was more wanting freedom, and how do we negotiate what time means and what's an okay for being late or not late, that really seemed to help, because that was a huge concept, at least here in Ohio. So I think that was one of the biggest differences I noticed within things. Is that something you guys notice in California as well?
Well, we have, there's a concept which Raven's very familiar with, which is Indian time. And Indian time, if you say, I'm going to meet somebody for at noon today, and we're going to go downtown, that could mean any time today or tomorrow or the day after. It means when I'm there, we will do this thing. And then there's also the more OCD determination of time, which is when I say I'm going to be there at 7:30, I mean I'm going to be there at 7:25, and I expect you to be in the car at 7:30, and we're leaving. And if you're not there, we're not going.
Right.
And we range across it all.
Right.
And what I find is you have to find out what the agreement is. I mean, I have a client in Australia. His time agreement is basically sometime. In other words, if I tell him I need something by Monday, and he says yes, what he means is sometime in the next week I'll get it to you. Not Monday. Almost guaranteed not Monday. But I have another client in the Netherlands, and if I tell him I need something by Monday, he'll have it to me on Friday. So I think it's not a spatial thing or anything else. I think it's individual, and it's how we relate to time ourselves. I think it's also how we set time up for our in regards to our conversation. You know, if I say I'm going to go to the movies and the movie starts at 7:20, so I'm going to pick you up at 7 o'clock, I'm pretty precise, you know. But if it's I'm going to drop by sometime tomorrow and see you, then anytime I drop by tomorrow is obviously okay, except for the fact it's not. And, you know, Raven does readings for people, and, you know, she gives them an assigned time. They have to call, right? And I think she's much too lenient because she gives them 10 to 15 minutes worth of leeway.
Except that most of them call on time. You know, it's interesting. I'll just say that 15 years of having a massage practice, and I was very busy. And I made a comment one time to someone that I was so stunned that for the most part my clients showed up on time. I had 15 minutes between clients, and then I started again. And I said to a friend of mine, you know, I'm just kind of amazed that this all goes as well as it does. And he said, well, that's because you expect it.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying.
He said, you are very clear. You tell people this is your time, and if you're late, you're going to be being charged money for being, you know, late or no show. And, you know, he said, you expect it, and so it runs smoothly. And I think that people don't, for some reason, people are afraid to ask for that definitive commitment.
Yeah, I think that in community, what happens is people say, well, we're going to do this, and they allow the time to slide. We're going to do this at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to have this ceremony, although maybe we wouldn't do it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 8 o'clock at night. And then they allow the time to slide. And then the next time it slides a little more. And then the next time it slides a little more. And I've been involved in organizations where if you're not there at 7:45, if you're doing a ceremony or whatever, you're not there at 7:45 or whatever they establish, you don't get to take place. Your part goes to somebody else.
Right.
And those groups, you mean, Raven knows, you know, Women of Wisdom was like that. If you weren't there on time, too bad. You know, you didn't get to do the whatever it was you were going to do. Because it was run on time. And I think it's an expectation of the organizer, and I think that is an issue of leadership. Because one of the things that I notice among pagan communities is some pagan communities, people don't want to take leadership. They don't want to take responsibility. Or they want to play at not taking leadership so that they can complain later. And I think that's, you know, not in any...
Well, I don't know about that, but it sounds like you're picking on the pagan community.
Well,
I think
she made the comment of the pagan community. I think any community it does it. You know, she made the comment about the pagan community. I don't know, you know, but going back to the point of relationships and talking about relationships, because relationships are relationships, whether they're between me and Raven or me and Sonia, who I notice is on the call, or Nikki Scully, or wherever. We have certain agreements in our relationships, and if we fault those agreements, then we're out of integrity. Don't you feel that that's part of the issue? Over to you, Andrea.
Well, not only that, but there are times we need to change roles. Sometimes it's out of necessity, and sometimes we've become tired of being in the role that we're in, and we want to shift, and the other partner's like blindsided, like, no, wait a minute, you were always the person who took care of this or handled that, or maybe you were always the person who initiated sexual intimacy, and then now all of a sudden you say, well, I want you to initiate, and you're like, and that person's like, what? Like that's not how it's been, and so now when the roles have been shifted either in responsibility for just day-to-day activities, or who's the friend who calls first, to who's the friend who initiates doing activities, who's the partner who initiates sexual intimacy, or initiates just talking about family or having more children or something like that, that shift in roles, which happens, can be very blindsiding. It's like one partner has decided that there's time for change, and they have enacted change, and no one else saw it coming. So it's kind of like a tsunami. Here it comes, and it crashes, and sometimes there's a terrible aftermath because it creates a lot of turmoil within the relationship.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation about this with a friend of mine last night who's on the cusp of a new relationship, and she says, I think I'm at the point where I would like to be in a committed relationship. And I said, are you really? And she said, yeah, I think so. I says, are you willing to commit to the good of the relationship over anything else? In other words, surrender to the relationship. And she says, do you mean give up my independence? I says, it's not about independence. It's about, are you willing to surrender to the relationship being the most important thing in the room? And she really had to think about it. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I think she's still thinking about it. But I know that, I've been in a 35-year marriage, and that's the way we've stayed in relationship, is that the most important character, the most important being in the room is the relationship. So we surrender to the relationship. Sometimes that means I don't do what I want to do. Sometimes he doesn't get to do what he wants to do. And sometimes we both get to do what we want to do. But the relationship comes first, and maintaining the relationship. Do you feel that that's the same whether or not we're talking about a personal relationship or a friend relationship or a group relationship, Andrea?
Well, what I found is that it doesn't work the same for everybody. So like where that has worked for you guys to make the relationship number one, there's been other couples that I've worked with over the years, and that's both lesbian couples, gay couples, and couples that have mixed variety, and polyamorous couples, and then regular traditional couples. In some of those relationships, other pieces of the relationship sometimes need to come first in order for the relationship to have what it has been based on. And sometimes that is income. There are some relationships that started based on, well, we're doing this relationship because we decided this was good for our family and financially good. And because they've, in order to sustain that, that's what they have to appease with. Now they have the right to change their mind and go towards the relationship, but that doesn't always happen for both couples. And so it's getting that person to see that, maybe you didn't enter this relationship for love. And a lot of times that's what I've seen. It wasn't necessarily for love, but for the idea of love. And so they admit to me one-on-one that they settled for the relationship, that this person was good and I was good and this will work, and so we created this relationship. And then now one person wants maybe more or less because they're not getting their needs fulfilled. And so what I try to do for them, or what I do for them, I love it when I put words like that together, is allow them this opportunity to not expect the other person to fulfill what it is that they're missing within their relationship. What is it that they need? They can fulfill themselves in a different way. So to allow their partner not to be responsible for their independent happiness, for them to be happy and love that person as a choice, because that's a choice they made to begin with. And it's been very positive for me, because when I start putting it that way and start having them focus on the positive and why they were like, they start thinking differently. It's kind of funny. I always kind of get that, what I call like that puzzled little dog look, where they go, like, you know, and it's really enlightening, because they're able to see that they can love that person and respect that person, and by releasing that person of having all this responsibility for their own happiness, I'm happy, because now they've not put a burden on the other partner to be who they are not.
Well, I happen to think that we're all responsible for our own happiness. I mean, I don't think anybody else out there can make me happy. They can't make me sad. They can't make me anything. In fact, as Raven will tell you, most people can't make me do anything. So, you know. You know, but the point is that when we're in relationship, I think that one of the issues that I come across is that people go into relationships with assumptions. In other words, and my grandfather was always a big one on the word assume. He says, you know, assume, it makes an ass out of you and me. So, but assumptions, you know, they assume that the relationship is going to run a particular way, which is the way that they expect relationships to work. But the problem is everybody comes at this from a different point of view. You know, I come at it from a point of view that, you know, I want to be in relationship with people for long term, therefore I'm going to do whatever is necessary in order to keep that relationship moving. You know, I'm going to call Andrea up whenever she doesn't call me. Or I'm going to, you know, Raven, I'm going to text her or let her know whenever it's raining, because I want to be in relationship with her. I want to be in relationship with the people. And then one of the reasons, I mean, I'm a communicator, so I want to be in relationship with the people who are watching my show. I want to be in relationship on Facebook. I mean, that's why I'm at 5,000 friends. You know, but but there are other people that's not how they want to be in relationship. They want to be in relationship that it's a tangential, if we happen to be in the same place at the same time, we'll be friends again. And I think that so it's important to recognize that there are different ways of being in relationship, that, you know, Andrea and I both go to a lot of events. To put it mildly, we go to a lot of events. And we see the same people. Over a period of time, we'll see, you know, the same people several times. And some of them are very good friends. Some of them are people we see at events. And the relationships are different and defined differently. And so, you know, I think that one of the things we have to look at is how we're going to be in relationship, how we want to be in relationship. And with our sexual partners, I mean, there we really need to get it defined and have agreements as to how we're going to be in relationship. Do you believe that's right, Andrea?
Yeah, one of the things, one of my analogies for sexual relationships and relationships in general is I really encourage people to stop working on their relationship. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people, most people in the world are not like me and you. We enjoy working. And so if somebody said, do you want to work on something? Work. But most people in the world, or anything that has to do with work, they hate it. And so if you tell someone we need to talk, they assume that that means bad. If they say we're going to work on our relationship, they're like, oh my goodness, don't make me work. Oh, they're going to bother me, they're going to nag me, it's going to be horrible. So what I tell them is to start playing in their relationship and focus on being fun and being playful, and finding out how that person is playful. When you mentioned the differences on how and how they react, you know, there's some people that I'm friends with that I'm very good friends with, but no matter what, they will never call me. It will not I mean, if they do call me, I would welcome it, but I realistically know that that's not going to happen. But when I call them, they love to hear from me, and they're like, oh, I wondered when you'd call again. And I always want to laugh and going, do you not have a phone? Can you not call me back? But I also understand that in our relationship, they're not the person to reach out. They're the person to sit back and allow people to come in. And if for some reason, if I were to get my feelings hurt or feel like they don't love me or care about me anymore, then I will feel bad and feel like I'm not cared about in the relationship. And meanwhile, they're going about their day and think nothing different because they think Andrea must be busy and that's why she's not calling. So there's that assumption of differences of relationship when actually that person never ever had any ill thought or any ill will. They just are not the type to call. And they're also sometimes the person who seems to, and it's not that they don't have anything to say, but they're more the people to hear and listen and receive information. And the only way that they will provide information is if they're specifically asked. Otherwise, they never think to tell you about what they've done all day because it just never dawned on them that that would be anything anybody wants to hear or anything that they'd want to repeat. So often what I find then is in friendships and in partnership relationships is those opposites attract. We always have the person who's the talker. If you haven't noticed, I'm the talker. And then we have the people who are the listeners or the acceptors, sometimes I say, sometimes the silent nodders. And it just kind of bobbed their head a little, and I actually joke. My husband's one of those, and I joke to him all the time that, I believe sometimes a brick wall actually responds a little bit more with a little more excitement, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't care, and it doesn't care what I have to say. It means he has a flatter effect.
Mm-hmm.
He's just listening, and he's weighing the information differently, and there are days that even I mean, it's so funny to be considered over the 20 years that I've been 20 plus years that I've been doing this, now that I'm considered, I'm known as a leading international authority in healthy relationships. And sometimes it makes me laugh because there's days that I have horrible relationships. But that's not because I'm not smart or not intelligent or haven't learned from what I'm doing. It's because I'm still human and the other person is human too. And because a lot of times these relationships have become different in distance as well. I mean, the idea that like Raven and Gloria talking on here through this and us talking through this, even though we can see each other, there is a little bit of delay sometimes in response, or how you can see things, or if the screen freezes and you're not sure what the person meant or what they said, it creates that confusion sometimes about what that person said and what you perceive them to say. And of course, text messages and emails where we're not able to show emotion or inflection of voice, and try as we may with those emoticons and bold and plus signs and dashes and whatever we do to try to put feeling and sparkle in a flat two-dimensional object, those are hard to read. It's really an art to put something in written vocabulary compared to what we say in person, and not everybody has that gift in person either. I mean, I know some wonderful people, and they say the most uncomfortable, awkward things ever that put people off, and they have the best of intentions, but that's who they are. And so to love them, we have to accept them as they are. And part of it is literally saying to yourself, I have one friend who, well, I guess there's no other way to put it, that when most people meet him, they go, wow, he's an asshole. And he is. He's an asshole. But he also loves people. And so it's hard to imagine that this idiot can be the nicest, loving person in the same breath. But I realized that to be his friend, I had to accept the fact that that is who he is. And part of being who he is that he's an asshole. And I either need to accept it and love him despite that, and when he goes too far or hurts someone else's feelings, or to put a stop to it, or to walk away from the friendship. And that's difficult. That's, I think, a difficult part with relationships, is knowing when to accept things as they are and knowing when to walk away.
And here I didn't think you met my husband.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
That's great. That's
yes.
great.
There are waiters and waitresses all over the western United States that have referred to my husband as asshole. Not to mention other people. So anyway, let's move on beyond this. You said something in one of your conversations earlier, and I want to go back and circle back to that because you said you'd done some consulting for people who are in polyamorous relationships. And I'm not sure everybody on here knows what a polyamorous relationship is. It's basically a love sexual relationship of more than two partners. And
right.
It's quite an interesting community. So I'm interested how you've managed to negotiate, because one of the things you learn whenever you're in relationship counseling or training back in the eons when I was in relationship counseling, is that 2 people in relationship is 4 relationships. 3 people in relationship is 9 relationships. 4 people in relationship is 16 relationships. So when you're counseling people who are in a polyamorous relationship, and this is true even, I would think even among friends and among groups as well, how do you go about that?
Yes. Well, the most challenging relationship advising that I had to do was with a core husband and wife that had multiple additional families, and so there were really 5 subgroups, all with children. And so the, I guess, matriarch of the relationship, as I would call her, actually kept a scheduled all the relationships of everyone so that she could spend time with her lesbian lover, with her husband, with her boyfriend, and there were 2 other people, and then I literally needed a chart. It looked like a spider web chart because that's how I had to move these pieces so that I could keep all the names straight and keep how they were. And what was really interesting is, prior to the perception was this couldn't work, but because professionally we're told to not bring our personal biases into a relationship, and they weren't looking for me to say yes or no or right or wrong. That was not my purpose or my job there. It was to listen and help them where they were at and to help them move along. Is relationship really worked for these people in this dynamic spider web, and really the only reason that they were asking for assistance is there was some disagreement with some legal situations where somebody at a school had found out that the parents were polyamorous and was saying that it was unhealthy for the children to be in that relationship. And so from me, they were seeking on how to handle outside community having feelings and thoughts about them and how they could respond without what they wanted to do was like scream out the window, "What are you looking at? None of your business, leave my kids alone," and they knew that in reacting that heart-wrenching way when someone's saying something about your children and how you love them, that they needed to be calm and they needed to be professional. And how do they do that? How do they explain who they are and what they do? And really for them, it was about telling them that they didn't have to explain who they were. That as far as the point about the children is they had an attorney, and to let the attorney do the piece of the agreement on who had the right to know what or where they were, but that they were who they were and that they had to love themselves and accept their situation. And as long as they outwardly showed love and respect towards other people, they were more likely to be accepted over time. And that is actually what ended up happening, is that because they were able to show that they were very loving amongst all of themselves, and they cohabitated in a community, so not all in the same household, but there was coming and going within the house and like within like a couple city blocks, then people noticed that they would come and go and be happy and wave to the neighbors and do favors, and over 2 to 3 years people realized that while their children come to their house or or visit other kids in the neighborhood, that they would allow their children to go to other people's houses and so forth over time. And so it was projecting under the world that they were who they were. Now, they were pagan, by the way. Also, these couples within this polyamorous relationship. But for other people in these relationships that aren't polyamorous in a group, but there's different situations. So like a husband and wife, maybe one of them has an additional partner that's known and accepted to the relationship, and the husband or wife actually is thankful for that other person being in their life. And that can be both a sexual relationship and non-sexual relationships. And sometimes that's when I'm able to get partners to realize that instead of being jealous that someone has an outside relationship, especially when it's a non-sexual relationship, that person fulfills a need. So now that partner who's in the house is not burdened with whatever emotional needs that other person needs. So like maybe someone needs someone to go over the same story over and over again with different outcomes, and the one partner hates to talk about that. Well, allowing them to have someone else in their life to fulfill that need, then release this partner from something that they're not comfortable doing. And it's not that they can't do it, that they're just not open to it. They're just not their thing, and loving them anyway. And I suppose the other biggest piece is I'm always telling people, one of the things I get asked to be on radio a lot is for this goofy thing, but I think it's saved more relationships than ever. And this is friendships as well as love relationships, is that I always tell people to be more excited to see the person coming in the door than the dog. And literally that means, when you come home, what does a dog do? They jump up, they breathe all over you, they're panting and they're barking and they're jumping and they want kisses and love, and they might sniff your butt. You don't have to go that far. You're welcome not to leave that out. But they're happy to see you. And I thought, what a greater joy in the world to come home every day or to come to a meeting and have someone happy to see you. And honestly, that's why I love going to events. I go to these events and everyone hugs me and they're so happy to see me. In my hometown, I go to my friend's house and they're like, yeah, hey, because they take advantage that they see you all the time. And I like being acknowledged, and it makes me feel good, and I like to do that for other people. And so when people start doing that in their everyday relationships, they start feeling miraculous.
Yeah, I understand about the events, because I was thinking the other day, I was sitting at an event with Robert Allen and Ted Miller. And, I was thinking that somehow there's a me that's there that doesn't exist when I'm not there, when I'm not at these events. There's a different me. And I actually like that me better than the one who sits holed up in her office, which, most of the time I'm in this gray office. The only reason I have light here is because I have big Klieg lights on, photographic lights on. And my relationship is that when I am at an event, I am totally and completely there and in relationship with those people. And I'm not there.
Yes.
I'm not there, I'm not there for sexual favors. I'm not there for, in many ways, it's not even about money as much as it is about being in relationship and building that relationship. And what I know is that over 2 or 3 years that I've been going to the particular events that I go to now, my circle has expanded, and that it's now beginning to pay off with clients and with programs and what have you that I want to be involved in. And just like a relationship, my friendship with Raven we've been together, we've been friends now since I think 97. Was that when I met you in Port Townsend? Sometime.
Well, I had met you before that, but that's when we really got talking.
Yeah.
Because I knew Women of Wisdom before that.
Yeah, it was when we were being eaten by the goddess Sekhmet. So Uh, but you
Way
know,
to make a friendship.
huh?
Great way to make a friendship. You were a shared meal.
That's right. We would digest it in her belly, uh, which kind of tells you where we come from.
Right.
And we have worked on this relationship. We have maintained this relationship, but we work on this relationship. We work on it on a regular basis. We talk to each other. We talk to each other about what's going on in our lives. We talk to each other about what we don't like. What we don't like about, not complaining, but we know that if I do something that Raven doesn't like, she's going to tell me. And if she does something I don't like, I'm going to let her know. And because we want to be in relationship for the long term. I mean, we're literally planning on creating a long-term retirement home with the Goddess Ranch, where we expect to live together for the rest of our lives.
Right. And you know what I think is really interesting?
Great.
When you and I started becoming really good friends, I had to learn how to be in relationship with your husband.
Which is always an interesting experience.
Yes, because I don't know Jay the way you know him, and I didn't see him that much, and Gloria had to tell me, now listen, this isn't how you are, this isn't a good way to be with Jay, or that didn't go over well, or that was good, you did that good, so that I could learn how to be in a relationship with her husband, so that the three of us could go on a trip together and do what we want to do. And that took communication.
Yeah, so,
that's kind of one thing, and it's not for everyone. I mean, there's a lot of, and it's certainly across every religion. There's some people who are comfortable being alone a long term. They're very comfortable being with themselves, and I think that we all need to be comfortable being with ourselves. And yet then there's this other sense of community that's needed or longed for or desired. And it kind of is interesting to me, because when you meant talking about this like retirement home or this community, for me, I've always liked that idea of different relationships and of people living in the same home. I've frequently joked with my husband that we have several friends that I wish that they could like move into our house, and not for sexual purposes, but for the fact that I thought, how fun, because like this person loves to cook and this person's really good with like stuff and tools and things, and I think of how wonderful that would be. It kind of makes me think of that old community ability where, like, the people who tended the garden together, and the people who built and did wonderful things together, and they had a close-knit community. So it doesn't have to be in the same house, but within that, within a community where they can count on each other and rely on each other, and be with people who are like-minded to achieve greater things and to be more parents for their children, more support that believe and support them, because we are in a society that's extremely busy. Very, very busy, and people don't always have time to reflect, and I think that would give them opportunity. Instead of all of us going to our separate homes and making a meal, gosh, if we took turns making a meal and we all went in and ate and then took turns cleaning it up, what a better life to me that would be. And that's one of the things that I liked about the spirituality connection for me. And when you talked about earlier on, you mentioned Gloria, about how sometimes people will be kind of backstabby, or like, oh, you're doing this religion wrong or this religion wrong. I had that happen to me first out. I had a woman who, I always joked to my husband that I said, well, I don't necessarily believe in the evil eye, but if I did, I'm getting one, because I was in college and she'd stand outside my college window and look like this at me and give me this dirty look. And one day I said, what are you doing? Why, why, you just seem to not like me. And she said, well, I heard that you're one of us and you're doing it wrong, and you're wrong, and you're not traditional, and you're messing everything up. And I was just so dumbfounded by that, because I'm like, well, I didn't know it came with an instruction book. Like, I'm like, the whole purpose that I was drawn to this is because I could be individual. And, to me, her saying that is no different than people who are Christians who act very unchristian-like and then claim to be Christian, and you're like, I'm confused. That doesn't make sense. So just like with every religion, there are people who are just rude or not nice towards other people in the and I'm like, you're supposed to be nice to me, not be mean. But that night, after I confronted her, I picked up my sewing machine, and it's the kind that buckles and locks, so the bottom should have never fallen out of the top, and it fell on my foot and bruised my foot really bad, and I was so afraid that I broke my foot. Because I believe very strongly in karma. What you put out comes back to you. And 3, the next day she was on crutches and had a broken leg on that same leg. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Wow.
It's kind of interesting.
But we do. I want to support us in being better priestesses. I mean, that's why this show. It's not to tell you how to light a candle or how to create an altar. Everybody's got different opinions about that. So, but how to be a better priestess, how to serve the divine in a better way. If we can give even one person an inkling, and I've gotten so many emails from people saying, I just so delighted that you solved a problem for me. And so anyway, before we sign off here tonight, I want to give you at least a few moments to talk about what it is you do in the real world, where, I realize that the relationship counseling is part of it, but the primary thing that Andrea is known for is the fact that she is a publicity and talent agency. So let's hear a little bit about, because I know we've got at least 2 or 3 authors still on them, and besides Raven and I. So
Great.
Talk just a little bit about the Red Carpet Connection and tell us how we can get in touch with you in case we want you to help us out.
Sure. Well, the Red Carpet Connection came from a divine moment of friends and having a friend who came up with this great idea for the name, and it fit very well. And red stands for relevance, enthusiasm, and energy, and delivery. And if you hit all 3 of those, you'll hit your target mark every time. And it just really connected for me, and connection's so important to me. And the idea of carpet, even of being grounded, to me that's of being grounded and of being connected to the earth. That was that analogy to me. And so when we created my logo is literally a star, like a carpet that goes into a star within a full circle. And it's that accompanying, so many wonderful things within this ability. And so within the redcarpetconnection.com, by the way, is the website. It's publishing, publicity, and talent agency, and we also do sponsorship and websites now and social media, and we do ghost blogging and ghost writing for entire books and a lot of really wonderful things, because my whole purpose is to give people a voice. I want people to have the voice that I never had as a child. I was told to shut up and that what I had to say wasn't important. And that was both not only my voice out loud, but my voice in singing, my voice in penmanship and what I had to write. And I found so many people now who have a story or a message, and that needs to outshine. People need to hear them sing or hear them speak or read their writings and know about them, because if only one person is changed by what they have to say, then that person needs it, and they're waiting. They are waiting for you. And all of that piece is built on relationships, whether it's a relationship with your fans, your followers, the media. It's relationships. And my relationship business started. I left law enforcement to go into relationships, and specifically niched in sexual relationships and intimate relationships, and that quickly merged to relationships because people weren't fighting about that. They were fighting about lack of money and disagreements on parenting and time and missing out on each other, and that soon merged into corporate relationships, which merged into the red carpet connection, which allows you to have a relationship with the world because someone's waiting for you. So it's time for me to turn the spotlight on you and let you get out there. So thank you very much for letting me share that.
Thank you for sharing that, and I really appreciate your coming on this evening. Next week, on Tuesday evening, we're going to have Susan Levitt, who was one of the authors in Stepping Into Ourselves, an anthology of writings on priestesses. And she wasn't able to join us during the telesummit, but I managed to convince her that we really wanted to have her come on and talk about astrology and tarot cards, and she's a fairly well-known astrologer and a relationship astrologer as well. And I'm looking forward to having her on and interviewing her next week. She'll be on Tuesday evening. The week after that, we have the Reverend Ione returning, our wonderful Reverend Ione, who we fell in love with early on in this event, who is a playwright, a producer, a force of nature, and they started the ministry of Ma'at. So, and we've got booked events now through the middle of November. So, and we are working towards getting the Priestess magazine out. I'm hoping it's going to go tomorrow to Apple to get approval. So we'll have something for you very soon. I was going to do a 16-page magazine was what I was going to do for the approval. I am currently at 32 pages. So I have overachieved once. I do have to write an article in order to make it happen, though. So thank you, Raven, for hanging in there and being our assistant producer, editor, best friend. Andrea, thank you so much for being there, and thank you everyone who's been listening and being present, and go forth and do good and have relationships that shine in such a way that other people look at you and they go, that's the kind of relationship I want to have, whether it's with a woman, a man, or maybe even your dog. There's a bumper sticker out there that I hope one day to be the person my dog thinks I am. Right. And I think that's true. And I know we got a lot of cat people here, and I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure what the cats think, but Catherine,
can I add one more thing?
Sure.
So some of you know that my sister is very ill.
Yes.
I told her goodbye Sunday, and I'm never sure I'm going to see her again because she is very ill. And she never complains. She's an amazing woman. She's my hero. And I was getting very teary and losing it. And she said, okay, now you just go out and have a safe trip home and go. And she said, and enjoy your life.
Yes.
And she said it to me like, be sure to gas up, or go get a burrito, or go get your coffee. She said, enjoy your life. And then she just waved goodbye. And I thought, wow. So I just want to pass that on tonight from my big sister Janet. Enjoy your life.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Sure. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you all. And this has been the 23rd edition of A Gathering of Priestesses, and we look forward to seeing you back here next week.